All right, how to build every muscle group. So in this presentation, what I'm going to do is walk you through how to figure out how to build your own workout plan by giving you examples of exercises to use for each different muscle group to build them for size, for strength, but really how to target each individual muscle group. So let's get started. Cool. So we're going to walk through each different muscle group individually and start with the chest. So the chest, to give you a very brief overview of chest anatomy, the chest is made up of two different muscle groups. It's the pectoralis major and the pectoralis minor, which is just underneath it. But when we think about how to train the chest, we're thinking about push type movement. So that's literally how you push your body away from an immovable object. That can be something like the ground for push-up, or it can mean something like weights for dumbbells, or bench press, something like that. So the chest anatomy, we're looking at the pectoralis muscle, and we're going to be targeting that muscle in three different ways. One, focusing on kind of the outer chest, the middle chest, and the second being the under chest, kind of the lower pec, and then the upper chest. So the upper chest is going to be, it's going to use a lot of the shoulder muscle as well. And again, all of these are going to be push type movements. Cool. So for chest pectoral training, we're going to be looking at pressing in three different distinct angles: downward, which you can think about like dips, for example; horizontal, which is going to be more like dumbbell chest press; and incline, which is going to be more like incline bench, or in some cases for body weight, these are going to be reversed. So for example, downward movement for dips, you're going to be doing more of like a yoga style push-up, where you're pushing up from the ground and pushing your chest up. And then horizontal is going to be pretty much the same. You're going to be doing things like chest, just regular push-ups or wide push-ups. And then incline is actually going to be reversed for bodyweight exercises. That's going to be a decline push-up. So for complete chest development, you need to be able to press in all different directions. And to build the upper chest, you must do incline work, which again, the reverse is the decline work that we're doing with bodyweight exercises. That means decline push-ups. And for dumbbell exercises, that means pushing up from an incline, so incline chest press. So to build the middle and lower chest, you focus on more of the downward and horizontal movements, which we'll get into in a minute. Cool, so exercise examples that you can use for building your chest. For your upper chest, for body weight, we're going to be doing decline push-up variations. For the weighted version of upper chest workouts, we're going to be doing incline press. So that's literally the bench is at an incline and you're going to be pressing straight up and out. For the middle chest, we're going to be doing bodyweight exercises focused on push-ups, wide push-ups, and archer push-ups. And then for the weighted versions of those, that comes into chest flies, pec deck, if you have a machine that you can use, and then regular bench press as well. For the lower chest, you're going to be pushing up from the floor in a kind of yoga style position. So that's going to focus a lot more on the lower chest, and also the triceps are involved in this movement quite a bit. So cobra push-ups are a great example of these for bodyweight exercises, diamond push-ups too, and then dips. That'll be things like a bench dip, for example, or just a regular dip on a dip machine. For the weighted exercise version of this, you're going to be doing a decline press movement or dips as well. For the chest, before we move on, usually if you're looking for hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, you're going to be focusing on around an 8 to 12 rep range. And that's going to be typical of most hypertrophy movements, 8 to 12 reps. For strength, if you're just trying to get stronger and you don't care how big your muscles get, although there is a correlation between how big your muscles are and how much force they can produce, so how much strength you can actually get from those muscles. you're going to be usually going for a lower rep range. So you want to be adding on a lot of weight and going for, 5 to 6 reps a piece. Okay, so let's get into the shoulders now. So shoulder anatomy is going to be a little bit different. So shoulders have 3 different distinct muscle groups, all called the deltoids. So there's the front deltoid or anterior, there's the deltoid medial or the lateral deltoid, and then finally the rear deltoid in the back. These muscles are responsible for overhead press type movements and are really, a functional shoulder movement is one where you are picking something up and putting it over your head. So that's going to be anything from like picking up a suitcase and putting it into, the overhead bin in the airplane, or just picking up, a small child and putting them on your shoulders. All of these are kind of shoulder focused movements. So abduction to the side and to the front is, literally rotating and moving your shoulder from side to side, moving your arm in towards your body and then back out. And of course, rotation of the arm. So the shoulder has all of these different functions, and it's going to be really important to think about that when we think of the type of exercises that are going to be used for building out the shoulders. Okay, so how do we train our shoulders then? So for shoulder training, you're going to be doing overhead pressing movements, which makes sense since we just realized that that's what the shoulder is made for. And then additional work for each of the deltoid groups, you can focus on doing over different types of overhead press movements or doing shoulder raises. And so that's going to be things like lateral raises, where you are literally holding something out to the side and, pulling it up from the side to around shoulder height. And then front raises, where you're doing the same type of movement, but in the front. Shrug movements are another kind of training mechanism to hit the shoulders. And for these, you're going to be targeting more of the posterior deltoids in the upper back or traps. And you can actually feel that when you shrug your shoulders up, there's a lot of back involved in that, right? You can feel the upper back getting hit. And so that's the type of training that we're going to do to target each one of the deltoids individually. One of my favorite movements in this, in shoulder training is the Arnold press, because you go from a kind of more of a front raise to moving to the side for a lateral raise, and then you're going to go straight up for the overhead press. So it kind of gets to hit all of the major deltoid training areas all at once. For overhead press movement, since we're using all of the deltoids together, and mostly the medial deltoid and anterior deltoid, which are a little bit stronger and more developed in most people, you're going to be using, again, that 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 rep range. For lateral raise movements, you can feel this when you do the movement. It's a lot harder because those medial deltoids are, not always as well targeted, and you're using just kind of one muscle group within the shoulder. So you're going to be doing a higher rep range with lighter weight, usually 12 to 15 reps. Okay, great. So let's get into what the shoulder training exercises actually are. So for body weight, shoulder training can be a little bit difficult, but there's some things that work very well. For body weight, you're going to be doing pike push-ups or handstand push-ups is kind of the next progression of that exercise. For the medial deltoid, you're going to do a body weight side delt raise. If you have any questions about any of these, I have a whole exercise library that can explain them to you. For the posterior deltoid is the reverse iron cross. That's a great exercise for your posterior deltoids. For the weighted exercises, you're going to be doing front raises, Arnold presses, overhead press for the anterior deltoids. A lot of those will also hit the medial deltoid, so you're going to be doing similar kind of press movements for those. And then lateral raises to really target those medial deltoids, or for the anterior deltoids, front raises as well. Finally, for the weighted exercises on the posterior deltoids, we're going to be doing posterior deltoid fly, where you're doing a bent over fly and raising up your shoulders to hit kind of that back deltoid. And then finally, face pulls, which are really important for improving your posture over time. All right, so moving right along, I've grouped all of the push muscles, all the muscles involved in pushing actions, kind of together. So with any of these, the shoulder exercises and the chest exercises, the triceps are usually going to be involved somewhat as well. Because anything that you're using your arms for, those arm muscles are going to be engaged at least slightly. So tricep anatomy, triceps get worked in both the shoulder movements and the chest movements, like I was saying before. Triceps create downward force in 3 different angles: downward, horizontal, and overhead. So that's why you can do like an overhead tricep extension, for example, but you can also do a downward tricep dip. So to avoid stress on the elbows, which gives a lot of people pain through tendonitis and that kind of thing, I like to go lighter with tricep movements and keep this to, like a 10 plus rep range and use lighter weights. Okay, so tricep training examples. So for body weight, we're going to be doing things like lying side tri rises and bench dips, overhand bench dips, and a lot of these are going to be just different variations of that dip movement where you're pushing your body weight up using primarily your triceps. For the weighted movements, you get a little bit more variability here. So you can do overhead tricep extensions with a dumbbell, for example, tricep kickbacks, tricep V handle or rope pushdowns if you have a cable extension that you can use at a gym, or skull crushers. Skull crushers can be really good with the easy bar as well in the gym because these keep your grip a little bit more neutral and can be really helpful to avoid wrist pain or elbow pain. Skull crushers are going to be really great exercises for really adding some mass to the triceps. Okay, moving right along. So we're now looking at the back. Okay, so if you want a wide, broad back that's going to really kind of make your physique look a lot better, make you look stronger, and also add a lot of functional force to what you're able to do around like picking things up, pulling yourself up on objects. That's what the back is for. And you can do a lot of different exercises with the back. So the back is able to create force in 4 different directions. You can do vertical pulls, so that's deadlifts, lifting things off the ground. Horizontal pulls, which is rows, where you're literally pulling things back and pulling your shoulder blades together. An angled pull, which is in between kind of a row and pull up or chin up. Overhead pulls, which are again kind of chin ups and pull up type motions where you're literally pulling from over your head. And then you have the traps, which are that top muscle up by your neck. And the trap can be a little bit harder to focus on, but you can do shrug type movements, which we mentioned before on the shoulder section. And you can also do other things to hit the traps, which we'll go into. The lower back, which some people forget about, is actually a component of the core and really helps stabilize your spine. So it's very important to work out the lower back. This can be trained directly, and we'll get into that later as well. So for back training, you want to try to keep it simple. Focus on pulling type movements where you're pulling something towards you. And you want to really focus on the mind-muscle connection on this one. This can be really important for people because a lot of people don't realize they're not used to training their back in such a structured way. So doing exercises that focus on, really contracting those back muscles, getting good form and moving very slowly can be really helpful to help activate the right muscle with the back. So exercises that focus on back width are going to be focusing on the lats. And that's, you can see where the lat is in the diagram. It's really going to help kind of pull your back out and help strengthen it and give you more of that broad back look. Exercises that focus on back density are going to hit more of the rhomboids. And so the rhomboids are up there by your shoulder blades. And, you're going to really add some more mass and thickness to your back by hitting the rhomboids in specific exercises. And a lot of the exercises that hit the lats will also hit the traps and the rhomboids. So, you don't need to always do things that are individualized to that particular muscle group. Finally, isolation movements are going to target more of the traps than the lower back. And so those are things like the shrugs that we talked about, Supermans for the lower back, but we'll get into that in the next slide. Okay, cool. So back training. Let's go into this a little bit. So for body weight, you have a lot of pull-up variations is what it's going to come down to for body weight back training. So for back width, you're going to look at wide pull-ups, chin-ups, Towel lat pull. So that's something where you're like lying on the ground and you have a towel and you're literally focused on pulling your shoulder blades together, which is the action that the lats really help with. And then for back density, we're going to do close grip pull-ups, eccentric pull-ups, which are slowing down the bottom movement of that pull-up. And those are really important because if you think about when you put your hands together, you're focusing on kind of pulling your back together as well, which is going to target those rhomboids, which are kind of in the middle of the back. Finally, for the lower back, you're going to be doing Supermans or other types of lower back extension exercises where you're pulling your body back. And then finally, for the traps, you have things like scapula push up and out, power pushaways on the ground, so those are similar to pike push-ups, and dive bomber push-ups, which I love because they target all kinds of things, tricep, back, chest, and are really going to give you a great workout all the way down. For weighted workouts for back width, we're looking at deadlifts, lat pull downs, back flies, anything that's going to kind of pull your back out and you pull those shoulder blades back. And then finally, back density, we're going to look at like one arm dumbbell rows, things that are really trying to keep those arms tight and pull back with a heavier weight. And then for lower back, we're looking at weighted back extensions. And for the traps, we're looking at shrugs or farmer's walks, anything that's kind of pulling your shoulder blades down, your shoulders down, and forcing you to pull back up with more to resist that weight. That's going to really work the traps. And having large traps, you're going to look like like Bane from Batman or something like that. But traps can make you look really big and strong. They're not always as focused on in a lot of workout programs, but I think they're really important for both physique and overall functional fitness. Okay, so the biceps are another pulling muscle. So again, it's similar to the triceps where you're using your arms to do a pulling motion. So they're going to be activated no matter what. But for the biceps, you're going to be working them in other compound exercises. So you don't need to do as much isolated work on them. Biceps are pretty simple to train since they perform just a simple movement. They move your arm up. They perform forearm flexion. So you curl, right? And so every kind of bicep exercise that you see is going to be some form of curl. And you can do these curls in different ways. So supinated, neutral, or pronated. Okay, and all of that is mostly going to depend on where your wrist is in relation to the rest of your body. And again, for actual explanations of what supinated, neutral, and pronated all look like, you can look into the exercise library where I'll show you a little bit more detail on those. Okay, so for biceps, similar to triceps, you're usually going to want to go for a lighter rep range, something more like 12 to 15. But for biceps, you're actually, because it's an isolation type exercise focused on just one muscle group, that's usually how that goes. But biceps are interesting in that they can get really strong and they can get really big. And so, what I like to do is vary up the amount of rep range that we're doing for biceps. So you can do high weight, low rep bicep exercises. And then I like to throw in some other kind of higher rep range with lower weight bicep exercises too. So it's something like dumbbell 21s or hammer curls, things like that are going to give you a little bit more variability and hit the biceps in different ways. So for body weight, again, we don't have a ton of options here because body weight can be a little bit harder to train for biceps, but you're going to do that curling motion with your body, right? So you can do that in a doorway where you're literally grabbing the doorway, curling your body in towards the doorway. Chin-ups are amazing for the biceps, and getting up to a single arm chin-up is a fantastic way to grow your biceps using only body weight. Finally, a towel lat pull is, again, it's going to focus on the back, but you're going to get some of that bicep work in there too. For weighted exercises, you have all kinds of different curls. So regular bicep curls, supinated bicep curls, and hammer curls. Hammer curls have the benefit of actually hitting your forearm a bit as well. And then pronated curls. And all of these are going to have different benefits for your overall fitness, but they're all going to train your biceps and just be hitting that same muscle group in different ways. So again, I like to add in kind of probably 2 to 3 different variations of these different weighted bicep options to whatever workout program you're going to build, so that you can have enough variability and really overload those biceps in different ways. Okay, so now we've moved out of the upper body officially, and we are moving down to the lower body. Quadriceps, or the quads, are some of the strongest muscles in your body. They enable you both lunging and squatting movements, and can be incredibly strong. And they can grow from both low rep high weight or high rep exercises. So the great thing about your legs is that people's bodies respond to stimuli in different ways, but you can grow your legs and your strength in your legs by doing both body weight exercises and doing high reps of those, or by adding weight and doing lower rep exercises too. A lot of people's bodies respond to both. So keep that in mind. You can mix in body weight training along with your weight training to really add a lot of strength to your legs. Okay, so a few examples of quad training that we have here. Body weight, we have lunge variations, body weight squats, Bulgarian split squats. Bulgarian split squats are awesome, and they're hard to get exactly right, so check out my exercise video on those if you have some questions. Bodyweight squats, very simple, but you want to try to keep your toes in as much as you can and parallel with your knees. Lunge variations are going to be good, but a lot of these bodyweight exercises can put more stress on your knees. So again, check out those training videos for alternate variations that you can use here. Weighted, we're looking at the same type of thing, but add weight, right? So weighted squats, leg press is another good one if you have access to a gym, and then Bulgarian split squats again, but holding a dumbbell or having a barbell on your back. Okay, so the next thing we have here are hamstrings, glutes, and calves. So these muscles all are together and work together to form the posterior chain. They extend the hip and they flex the knee. So a lot of times if you have, hip problems or things like that, tight hips, that can really play into, what's going on with your hamstrings or glutes or even your calves sometimes, because these are all kind of connected. So the glutes, we'll start there, are made up of 3 different main muscle groups. So the gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, and gluteus medius. These are all different areas of the glutes. Really what you're going to be doing is training the gluteus maximus primarily. Gluteus minimus and medius are trained as kind of ancillary muscles, and you can do exercise for those. It will really, if you're really looking to shape your butt, then that's going to help you out a lot, is hitting those extra muscle groups in the butt. But the maximus is the main one. These muscles stabilize the thigh bone, and they help rotate your leg internally and externally. So pretty important. They are key in helping us stand and walk. So again, if you're doing a lot of running or walking, having strong glutes and hips and hamstrings, all of those can come into play and be very important for figuring out how to minimize injury. So deadlift and hip hinge movements. So this is literally hinging your hips, coming from more of a squatted position like you see in the diagram to a standing up position, and moving your hips from that out position back in line with your torso. These are hip hinge movements, and those plus the deadlift are going to be very typical of hamstring and glute training. Okay, so a few posterior chain training examples. For the body weight side of things, you have glute bridges. Body weight hip thrusts are fantastic for your glutes and hamstrings, and single leg versions of those are much harder, so that's how you would progress that exercise. Finally, kickbacks and donkey kicks, which are going to be lifting your leg up into the back, and that really activates the glutes. For the weighted exercises, you're going to be doing things like deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, lying leg curls for the hamstrings. Those are really great. And for body weight, you can do those using a stability ball. And then hip thrusts again. So very simple exercises for the posterior train, but you're able to add a lot of weight to these and do a lot of reps because they're such strong muscle groups. Okay, everybody's favorite training section of the body, the abs, the abdominals. So, abdominal anatomy. Your abs are actually made up of 4 different muscle groups, and they're primarily responsible for things like breathing. So, inhalation, exhalation, and then spinal stabilization. So, you want to really have a strong spine, especially if you age. So, having a good, strong core is important to that. Flexion and extension. So, that's literally like bending your body down and then bending your body back. And of course, rotation of the torso, right? So all of the abs play into all of these things, and training the abs is really going to come down to hitting every different muscle group within the abs and every different section of the abs, while also doing things that are going to be similar to the kind of functions that you're going to be doing throughout your day. So if you I'd say, like, a lot of people don't even train abs because they're used in all of these other compound movements. But if you choose to, it's a good idea to focus on a mix of exercises that hit each part of them and actually help promote stabilization, especially of the spine and the lower back. So let's go into that now. Okay, ab training examples. So we have all kinds of different sections of the abs that we can hit. What I'd recommend if you're going to be building yourself an ab training program, or if you just want to do a quick ab workout, is to pick one of each of these different sections and do a certain number of reps for each of the exercises. So that way you make sure that you target each section of the abs and you get to every single piece. So for body weight, we're going to do crunches, sit-ups. The upper abs, a lot of times you're moving your upper body forward. So think about it that way. So you're doing crunches, sit-ups. For the weighted version of that, you're just adding weight. Again, so weighted crunch, weighted Otis up, weighted upper crunch. Lower abs, you're going to be lifting your lower body off the ground. That's how you engage your lower abs. That's where you really get that deep V look that you see in the movies. So training lower abs can be very important, especially if you're looking for physique goals. So for those, you're looking for things like leg lifts, reverse crunches, and then on the weighted version, you can do one-arm dumbbell rows, or you can do weighted leg lifts as well. So for obliques, this is your kind of the side area of your abs. This is responsible for twisting movements. So you're going to be doing a lot of bicycle crunches, Russian twists, wood choppers for body weight, and then weighted versions of those for the weighted. Stabilization exercises are really good for endurance within those muscle groups, and they're going to really help, again, stabilize that spine long term. So you're going to do plank variations, things like side planks, regular planks, plank to push up. And then for the weighted, you're going to be doing things like farmer walks to really kind of hold your body in line while you walk around with a heavy weight. Finally, the lower back fits into the abdominals because it's part of the core. So I always like to include it here. So for the body weight for the lower back, you can do things like Supermans or back extensions on the ground. And then for the weighted version, you can do weighted back extensions, which is kind of like a reverse sit-up with weights. Okay, and that is the end of this presentation. But what I want to recommend that you do now is take a look at each of the different training examples that I mentioned here and try putting together your own workout program based on that. So build a workout for yourself using some of the exercises from the upper body, some of the exercises from the lower body, and then some abs. And let me know how it goes. The most important thing to think about here is not to overdo it. Try to start off slow and then increase over time using the progressive overload idea, where you are slowly increasing the intensity of your workouts over time, either by increasing the amount that you're doing with volume or increasing the weight that you're using over time. All right, and that's it for this presentation. Thank you so much for listening.